Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del challenges the status quo, questions everything, and empowers you to return to your core beliefs to make your life better. If you're ready to hear the truth and get your roadmap to the lifestyle you really want, the next hour will change your life. And now your host, self-made millionaire, national award-winning investor of the year, CEO and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley.
I'm your host, Del Walmsley, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. Let's go ahead and follow up with what we wanted to cover today. Today's topic is something that comes out of this book, and it was a book about social inequality. And it's interesting because what it's talking about is that most of us believe that life is on a bell curve where, there's very few people that are poor, then most people live in the middle class, and then the rest of the people, very few people are rich. But what this book is outlining is that wealth is not actually a bell curve. It's actually a gigantic upward spiraling hockey stick that goes almost straight up from the average person. You look at the average person, 80% of the people in this country, actually, I think the way the chart they had there was like 95% of the people were under the 20th percentile. And the rest of the 80% of the wealth belonged to 1% of the people. I think it was 1%. 80% of the wealth belonged to 1% of the people, and a very large percentage belongs to 0.1% of the people in this country. And it's, you look at that and you go, wow, this is why we have unrest and unruling and this and that and whatever. And today I want to talk about that because I've been talking about this for 27 years now on the radio. And I want to cover it in my fashion because I don't think people, I hate when people write books like this because all it's going to do is upset people because they're not giving them any answer. There's no answer to social, unfairness, whatever it is, because you can't do anything about social unfairness. You can only take care of yourself, and what you can do to change your life is within your own means. The fact that most people vote for these ridiculous parties, Republican and Democrat, the like, and think that they're going to change their life is just a ridiculous concept. If you really want to change your life, you have to change your life. So today's conversation is you can't get rich slow. This is something I realized very early on in my wealth building process. Most people believe that, you're going to work and save and work and save and work and save, and over 40, 50 years of your life, you're going to build up and amass an amount of money. And that would be considered wealthy. I don't believe that at all. I have no belief system for that, and I've had it proved wrong thousands, if not tens of thousands of times by customers that come in and join up with us. They show that, hey, at 40, 50, 60 years of age, even at 70 years of age, people have not become wealthy yet. And I think the problem is because you don't realize you can't get rich slow. You have to get rich quick to get rich. Otherwise, you just don't understand the concept behind getting rich. Rich is where you have a large chunk of money you don't need. Very large chunk of money you don't need. Or an astronomical chunk of money that you don't need. It is not having a few ducats in the bank. It's not the American dream of having a 401k or an IRA or a savings account or a college fund for little Billy. So I wrote down this morning, I think, let's talk about what rich is. How rich is rich? And I started thinking about people out there and thinking, what do people compare to wealthy? And I remember when I was young, the first thing I compared to was I wanted to make more money than my dad did. I wanted to have more stuff than my dad did. But my dad was not even anywhere near anything better than lower middle class. And so I remember when I made $70,000 a year working in a health club, I thought I was rocking it. I really did, because I was outdoing my dad, who was a CPA. And, you think about this. So you compare yourself to your parents, and your parents say, well, I don't want this life for my kids. And so you believe that this little increase from your parents, which are not successful to you, is an increase. It's a success. I say no. I say no, it's not. The next one is you compare to your neighbors and friends. So you got a better car in the driveway than your neighbor does, so you're rich. They're not. You've got better house than your friends have, so you're rich, and they're not. You've got nicer clothes, which makes you rich, and them not. You've got a Rolex. And you compare this to your friends and neighbors and common folks, and you think because you have a little bit more than they do that you're rich. But you're not. The next thing you do is you compare to coworkers. Now, coworkers are really interesting because there's a hierarchy in your coworker environment. There are people that do make more money than you, and you know they do. And there are people that make less money than you, and you know they do, and they know you do. And so there's this unnatural world, this pecking order, this hierarchy of people knowing that other people are better than them. Well, Dal, come on. Don't say better. Just because he's got a higher paying job, he's not better than me. No, I'm telling you, he's better than you. Oh, man, that just irritates. Doesn't that irritate you? Now, I could be saying that just as a joke right now. You wouldn't know it. But I know it irritates the crap out of you to think that your boss is better than you. But somehow he got ahead of you. Maybe because he's been there for 30 years. Maybe because he's relative to the owner. Whatever it is, somebody made a better decision than you did as far as making money goes. Because you're not rich, and they're wealthier than you are. Boy, that irritates, doesn't it? I just love saying it just to feel the irritation in the air as it goes out over these radio waves, man. So you compare yourself to your coworkers, and you're groveling, trying to get ahead of your coworker, right? You're climbing the ladder of success, knowing that the view never changes because you got someone right in front of you on that ladder. I just want you to imagine there's a guy right above you, and you're climbing. What are you looking at? What happens when that person decides to let something go? Who's it going to hit first? You know, crap always falls down, right? And so that's your life. You're living this life of quiet desperation, climbing this ladder. The next one is, do you have nice things and do you travel? Yeah, I'm wealthy. I've got a nice house. It's a beautiful house. We even had it built for us. Man, it's 3,000 square feet. It's 4,000 square feet. It's got incredible marble countertops. It's got an incredible master bathroom, and it's got a swimming pool. Wow. I'm rich, right? I've got a nice car. I know that two of my friends have gone out and bought Ferraris. Now, you tell me that's not a midlife crisis? Come on, man. You can't drive a Ferrari in Houston, but I got two friends that own them. Why? Because that Ferrari is what makes them feel rich. It's their masculine representation. I don't want to get into all that, but you understand what I'm saying? This is a midlife crisis decision to look rich. I know it's not being rich. It's trying to look rich, right? So having things. How about people who travel? People brag about traveling. We've been to 27 countries in the world. But you look at their house, it's a piece of garbage. You look at the way they live, they don't have any money. But they spend every penny they have on travel. Because to them, travel makes you worldly, right? So that's how they gauge it. Whew, man. How about this one? I'm the first generation of my family to go to college. Wow, there's some wealthy thinking right there, huh? You really made it, Mr. and Mrs. Nobody. Just because you went to college? Well, I've got a doctorate. A doctorate? Yes, I've got a doctorate in African psychology. What the hell is that? You know, you understand what you're saying? You have these beliefs that makes you superior to everybody else. And the truth of the matter is, none of them make any sense. Some of you believe you're rich because you have money in your 401k, in your IRA, in savings accounts. But when we get back from break, I'm going to go into that. I'm going to talk about how much money really is rich. how much savings is rich and how much income is rich. When we come back, we'll get deep into that conversation. We'll be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
Listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes.
For 30 years, I've taken the smartest people I could find and then held them up as examples for you guys to learn from. We're all only as strong as our best people. But the best part about this is that these best people are willing to give back.
Ready to learn from the best? It starts with our free online workshop. Stop depending on your paycheck. Quit worrying about retirement. Register now at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Today we're talking about how you can't get rich slow. And we're trying to create the realization for you that although you think you're doing fairly well in life financially, that you're really not. And what I want to talk about next is about perceiving and believing. And what I mean by that is I read a book one time called Think and Grow Rich. And in that book it said, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. And it goes on and says, but the answer to your question is in every page, every chapter, every paragraph of this book. But you won't see them because you can't see it yet. You're not ready for the material to jump out at you. So it said the way to read the book was to read it chapter by chapter and mark down stuff that was important. You highlight it and make notes and then come back and read it again. So I did that. And I did it 3 different times in 3 different highlighters. And each time I did it with a different color highlighter, it always interested me. The stuff that I found most interesting the first time through, by the time I read it the second time, I go, I don't know why I even underlined that stuff. That's self-evident. And what I realized was by the 3rd or 4th time I read it, it was self-evident because I had become that information. I was living that information. And so each time when I read it again, I was finding stuff that I had just skipped by because it was too complex for me at that moment. It was too above my thought level to pick up. And I was sitting one time at lunch, and I was working in the health clubs at the time, and I was sitting at lunch reading this book at a salad shop. It's called Super Salad, something like that. And across from me was the owner of the Porsche dealership and the quarterback for the Houston Oilers at the time. And one other guy, I don't remember who the other guy was, and they were sitting there just having lunch, chit-and-chatting. They saw me reading the book, and they came over to my table and said, hey, or I actually just waved over to me and said, hey, I see you reading the book. I said, yeah. He says, how many times you read it so far? And I said, this is my 3rd time. He goes, yeah, you'll start to get it by the 3rd time. He says, by the time you get to 11, you'll understand it. And I was like, wow. Here I was on my 3rd time through bragging to myself how much I had consumed of this book because the first color, was all over the place. The second color filled in most of the gaps. The 3rd color was filling even more. And this guy is telling me, hey, I'm the quarterback for the Houston Oilers. I own the largest Porsche. This other guy, I own the largest Porsche dealership in the city. Listen to us. You're not there yet. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm working at a health club. I'm making more money than my dad ever made by way more. I'm successful at any belief extent. I'd already won Mr. Texas, Mr. Arkansas, Mr. Louisiana as a bodybuilder. I won tons of powerlifting contests, even some Olympic lifting contests, Junior Olympics at one year, set some records. Man, I thought I was successful. And here are these 2 heavyweights telling me, you'll get there. Just keep trying. And I'm thinking to myself, wow. I just can't even understand. You listeners out there right now do not understand what it's like to be worth $100 million. No way you could understand what it's like to be worth $1 billion. You can't even conceive it. You can't even conceive being worth 10 million. It's just hard for you to understand the difference. And so the relativity of it all, right? Now, here's the part that's interesting. The book says whatever you can conceive and believe, you can achieve. But the first part is conceiving it. It's not even believing it. You know, you listen to me go, Del, God, what a blowhard on the radio today. I don't know what got into you. You're just crazy, arrogant. No, I'm not arrogant. I'm humbled. I'm humbled by the fact that I was just like you. I had no idea how poor I was. And at every level that I came up along the ranks, I constantly found people that were more successful than I was. Every time I thought I had mastered something, that only got me to the level of being introduced to the person better than me. Because at the bottom of the barrel, you don't get introduced to people at the top. That's what's so interesting about Lifestyles Unlimited. You walk in the door and nobody, and you're standing there with millionaires and multi-millionaires, and they're talking to you kindly, friendly, openly. You don't get that anywhere else. Go to one of these highfalutin dinner party, charity events and see if anybody will talk to you. They won't talk to you. You come to Lifestyles, those very same people, stripped down to their blue jeans and their comfortable, casual suits and outfits, they're going to be willing to talk to you. It's a different environment. But I digress. I digress from the fact of what I really want to cover, which is this relativity of people can't conceive. And if you can't conceive it, you can't possibly believe it. You don't even conceive it yet. And so let's talk about being rich, an amount of money. How much is a good amount of money? And I remember when I first started buying real estate, I bought like 8 or 9 houses out of my own money, and then I ran out of money. So I started buying with partners. And in no time at all, I had over 100 houses. Now, with 100 houses, I was making over $100,000 a year of tax-free income. Now, at the health club, I was making 70, and it was taxable, which meant I took home probably $3,000 or $4,000 a month, like $3,500 a month. Now I'm taking home $10,000 a month, tax-free. I'm rich. I'm making 3 times the amount of money I was making before. And I'm working not 60, 80 hours a week like I did in the health club. I'm working 8 hours a week. And I'm thinking, wow, I have made it. So my first level of being a millionaire was owning millions of dollars of assets. In my brain, because I had all these houses, I had assets worth millions. I was a millionaire. But then something happened, and that was I bought an apartment complex that went up in value within 1 year, $1 million. And I did a refinance and pulled the money out, and there I had $1 million. For the first time ever, I had $1 million. Now think about that. I didn't have $1 million worth of assets with $1 million worth of debt. I had $1 million worth of real money. Totally different situation. So now in my brain, now I've made it. Now I'm a millionaire. I remember sitting on the side of a cliff down in Mexico, Puerto Vallarta, I believe it was, with another guy that was rich. And both, we thought we were rich. We had about, millions of dollars of assets. And we're sitting there talking about how we had made it. And it was just beautiful and life was incredible. And then we read this book. And the book said, How to Be Filthy, Stinking Rich and Still Have Time for Great Sex. And that book said, if you don't make $500,000 a year, you're not rich. And we weren't making $500,000 a year. We were making $100,000 a year. And all of a sudden that irritated my friend radically. Oh, that arrogant SOB. You don't have to make $500,000 a year to be rich. And I thought about it, yeah, maybe you do. Maybe we need to redirect and figure out how to go out and make $500,000 a year. And I did. And so when we come back, we're going to talk about changing your belief systems and your level of thought to get you where you need to be more successful.
We'll be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes.
Kirby tells Del about his experience as a member and apartment owner.
Started out as a passive,
Yes.
and then one day the light bulb went on. Hey, why don't I do this?
Yeah. I was sitting at home. I'm like, when you're 33 years old and you're retired, and
You guys get that? Yeah, I'm 33. I don't know what the hell to do with myself.
I really didn't. There was 1 week I went
Doesn't life suck?
and it seems unbelievable to me when I think about my history, but it's really simple. I joined Lifestyles. I've taken the 2-day class a half a dozen times. I network with other Lifestyles members, leads. I do what Lifestyles teaches. I'm on my properties. I invest a lot of our personal funds in the properties, and it has just created unbelievable results. And it's completely improved my life.
Ready for your unbelievable results? Start with a free workshop just like Kirby. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Today we're discussing the fact that you can't get rich slow, and that is in your control. That life is not something that happens to you. It's something you make happen to you, and you've got to make the decision to make a change. But to do that, you have to be able to conceive. Before you can achieve, you must conceive and believe. That's straight out of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And yet most of you can't even conceive how much money you can make. You don't believe that other people make that much money. You can't conceive it. It doesn't make any sense to you. So like I said, there I was making $10,000 a month, and then all of a sudden I made $1 million in one transaction. And at that point I realized, well, why don't I do this more often? It made sense to me. Why don't I do what I just did? Buy an apartment complex, make it go up in value, and pull out $1 million tax-free. That was it. It was a model. All of a sudden, there it is. Once you do that, I thought, why even have houses? Who cares about this $10,000 a month if I can make $1 million in one transaction and own one apartment complex that makes me $10,000? Why mess with 100 houses? See, you're looking at things in a linear fashion. If I work 40 years, if I save for 40 years, if I deposit money in my 401k for 40 years, and all of a sudden my brain woke up and said, you can't get rich that way. You got to make money fast and big, large chunks. And so I went on and did it 3 more times. I bought one apartment complex, then I bought the apartment complex across the street, then I bought the one next door to that one, then I bought the one around the corner, and then I bought the one around the corner from there. And all of a sudden I own 5 apartment complexes within 5 blocks. Whew. Now I'm starting to make some money. Now I'm making more money than I can even conceive, right? And I'm sitting there going from $10,000 a month to $50,000 a month. And I'm thinking, man, what do you do with $50,000 a month? And I really didn't have anything to do. I tried to spend it. I tried to figure out ways to waste money and spend money. I just couldn't figure it out. But then I said, why not do even more? And so I did more. And all of a sudden I was making $100,000 a month. And I woke up one day and I was worth about $10 million. And I'm thinking to myself, where do you go from here? I really had this just deaf, dumb concept in my brain. Where do you go from here? And I was talking to one of my friends, investor, who had a friend that was a billionaire. And, so I said, you know what, let me find out about becoming a billionaire. So I went to the library and I found there are no books on how to become a billionaire. I looked online. There are no seminars about how to become a billionaire. No one will teach you how to become a billionaire. There are books about billionaires. There's books about how they became billionaires, but there's nothing about how you can become a billionaire. So I asked my friend, can you introduce me to this billionaire? I mean, I help all these other people become millionaires. It's so simple. Once you follow me, it took me 40, 50 years, whatever it was, by the time I was 40 years old, I think, 35, 40 years old, I made my first million. I think, and I show people how to do it in there. When I started, I said, let me show you how to retire in 7 years. Then we changed that to 5 years, and now people are laughing in my face. David Fisher does this stupid thing with his fingers and goes deuces, and because he did it in 2 years. And a lot of people are doing it in 2 and 3 years now, retiring. Because they don't have to figure it out. They can go right for the stuff that makes the biggest difference, because I went over there and tiptoed through the toilet pole, trying to find my way to the other side, being worried that someone's going to flush me down the toilet. And it just doesn't work that way. If you know how to get rich, you can get rich quick. So I asked him if I could meet this guy, and he said yes. And so believe it or not, this billionaire guy flew in from California to meet me for breakfast. And when I met this guy, I'm sitting there in a pair of blue jeans and relaxed at this restaurant, just a casual restaurant, breakfast kind of place called Buffalo Grill. And this guy drove up in a limo. And the guy driving his car was the sheriff of Harris County. That's the kind of bodyguard he had. The sheriff of Harris County was his bodyguard. And when he got out, he had like this $10,000 suit on, a $50,000 Rolex watch. It just blew my mind. This guy was so rich. But you know what I hated about the guy? He was friendly. He was happy. Had a dark California tan, big giant smile. And he was just as nice as can be. Then I realized this. Rich people aren't mean. Poor people are mean. People driving down the street whose life is a quiet desperation, they're the ones that are giving you the hand signals. Those are the ones screaming at you. Those are the ones pulling the gun. The guy driving slowly down the street in his limo doesn't have a worry in the world. Rich people don't have any worries. They don't have a reason to be mean. They're not jealous of you. You're jealous of everybody else. You're jealous of the guy right next door to you. Makes 10 cents more than you. These guys don't care. Doesn't bother them. So I'm sitting there at the table with him. I said, look, man, I'm going to tell you what I do. I help people become millionaires, but I cannot find anybody to teach me how to be a billionaire. And I said, let me explain a story to you. I sit down with a guy, and, a guy comes in, he's got $100,000, $200,000. And he says, look, I think I'm pretty successful. I got $200,000 in the bank. And I go, well, what do you want to do? He goes, well, my financial planner said I needed $1 million. And if at $1 million, I could retire at 4% withdrawal. 4% withdrawal would give me $40,000 a year. And that, my Social Security, I think I could retire. I said, so if that's what you think works, then why aren't you doing it? He goes, well, I don't have the $1 million. I said, so you came to me to get the $1 million? He goes, yeah, then I'll go back to that guy and get $40,000 a year. I said, dude, if I teach you how to make $1 million, you're not going to need the $40,000 a year, because you'll be making $100,000 a year, or $200,000 a year, or $500,000 a year. Because once I teach you how to make that extra money, you're going to learn how to make money way faster than let some financial planner mess with your money. And I said, so how much do you have to start? And he says, well, I have $200,000. I said, okay, so let's see how effective this guy's system is. You're $200,000, and you want to have $1 million. $1 million is 1,000,000. You have 200. You only need 800,000 more to go. How long did it take you to get to 200,000? He goes, well, I've worked for 40 years. I said, 40 years to get 200,000? You need 4 times that? Come back to me 160 years from now. And the guy looked at me with like a death stare. I said, in other words, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. Your problem is how you see the problem. There's no way to solve the problem at the same level of ignorance the problem was created at. You're living a quiet, desperate life of middle-class existence. So now I'm sitting here with this billionaire, and I'm, going through, this is what I do for a living, is teach people to take that giant step. So I want to take that giant step. And the billionaire said, okay, let's do the same thing with you. He says, what do you want? I said, I want to learn how to be a billionaire. He goes, what do you got to start with? I said, I can start with 10 million right now. I've got 10 million I can work with. And he goes, okay, let's think about this. There's 1,000 million to a billion. You have 10. You only need 990 more. How old are you, Del? I said, I'm 50 years old. He said, my friend, you're never going to make it. You're never going to make it. Even if you double what you have, it's only 20 million. And if you double that again, it's only 40 million. If you double that again, it's 80 million. If you could double every 2 to 3 years, by the time you die, you might be worth $100 million. That's probably your goal. $100 million. So, well, why can't I be a billionaire? Because you think like a millionaire. That's why. You didn't get that $1 million by taking $10 million, investing and getting 10% return. I said, no, I bought an apartment complex for $150,000 down and I made $1 million with it. He goes, that's 1,000% return, Del. Now, how are you going to go take that $10 million and get 1,000% return? Because that's what you need. You need 1,000 million, Del. Not 10 million, not 20 million. You need 1,000 million. And I felt just like that guy that was distraught when I was talking to him about the 100, 200,000. I looked at him, I said, thank you, man. I think you've just done what I've needed done. You just clarified to me that I have no conception of what it's like to really make money. So I went back to my staff and my team, my family, and I said, I'm going to double my net worth in the next 2 years. I'm going to double my income in the next 2 years. And I didn't quite do it. I went a little further. Within a year, I was making $1 million a year. Within 2 years, I was making $2 million a year. And it kept going up. And it kept going up because I now could conceive that even a couple $1,000,000 a year was not that much. That it could be $100 million a year if you really thought about it and really dug into it. When we get back, I'm going to tell you a little story about someone that did just that. We'll be right back with the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
Listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes.
What would you say to women out there, Kelly, if they're thinking about doing this, if they're sitting out there right now going, I'm trapped with a glass ceiling where I work, I know I can't go up any further, there's no room there. What would you say to them about becoming their own boss?
Well, you can decide to stay where you're at and keep trying to crack that glass ceiling. But at the end of the day, in this environment, it is so easy, to be able to get out of that mold. People know me and they come up to me and they're very gracious and they don't look at me and say, oh, you're a woman, I'm not going to invest with you, I'm going to go over here. There's no real gender there.
Are you ready to be part of a world where there are no glass ceilings, no gender bias, no limits? Start like award-winning real estate investor Kelly did with the online free workshop. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. And today we're talking about you can't get rich quick, or you can't get rich slow, you can only get rich quick. And we've talked about all the different belief systems that people have. The one that I found to be most difficult myself is the fact that at each level that you hit, the next level you hit, whether it be 1 million or 10 million or 50 million, I haven't myself hit 100 million yet, getting closer all the time, but we'll hit that number, I'm sure, in some period of time. But at each level I hit, it was like, okay, why don't I just stop? I remember having this conversation one time with a group of people, and they say, Del, why are you not aggressive this year? Why have you laid back on your hands this year? And I said, well, look, I'm 60 years old. No one in my family's lived past 65, no male. I got $10 million, and why care? What's the difference? If I'm going to die in 5 years from now, I could live on $2 million a year. If I have to just live 5 years longer than anybody in my family, I still live on $1 million a year. And that's if I don't make any more money, and that's not the case. My businesses are going to make more money. So I really have no reason to care about doubling my wealth again. Now, right after saying that, I sold a bunch of apartments, made $17 million. Not right after it, I mean, a couple years later. And so, my net worth just kept doubling. I just kept boom, boom, boom. And the wealthier I get and the more money I make, each time I get to this level of complacency. And what I've had to do in my life, because I don't have mentors. I mentor tens of thousands of people, but I don't have anybody right in front of me saying, Del, come on, let's get you over that $100 million hump so you're not such a waste of a human being. If I had somebody kicking my booty like that, it would be really impressive, but I don't got anybody that are in my association that's got more money than I do. And the people that have more money than me aren't the kind of people who tell you how to get more money. They're just not that kind of people. So I have to force myself. Now, if you're not at Lifestyles and you're out there living with a bunch of middle-class common people, or your family's middle class, and you're living that life of quiet desperation, you're going to have to either get over to Lifestyles and get involved in something where people are higher than you are to motivate you to take that next step, right? So you can conceive it and believe it by meeting it. Or you're going to have to do what I do, which is just close your eyes and take another step. You're going to have to just force yourself. Now, here's where the challenge lies. And this is what I find to be true. And this is also why it's scary to give a talk like this on the radio. Those of you out there that are failures because you're not very smart. Now, there's smart, there's educated and uneducated, there's common sense and no common sense. But some of you don't have the decision-making practical nerves to not make bad decisions. What do I mean by that? Every self-help teacher out there that I've ever read tells you you have to fail your way to success, and I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. The people that I know that are successful didn't fail their way to success. They succeeded to success. People who say you have to fail your way to success are people that are either lucky that they're successful, or they don't want to admit that they ever failed. I mean, that's their way of saying, okay, I got to admit I failed and everybody else fails too. But you don't have to fail your way to success. All you have to do is find somebody who knows how to do it and follow them, right? Model somebody, as Tony Robbins says, model somebody successful. Don't go out there and try to reinvent the wheel yourself. That doesn't make any sense at all. So you go out there, and what you have to do is you have to decide that you will make good decisions, not bad ones. But a lot of people that have not succeeded to midlife or later feel like they're behind the curve. And when you start talking about doubling down and compounding and trying to get ahead, and you've got $1 and you double it, you have 2, and you have 2, you have 4, and 4, you have 8, they go, wow, they'll never get there, even if I compounded it 100 times. And so what do? They make bad decisions and lose everything they have. They go out there and they gamble. That's exactly what they do. They gamble. They take gigantic risks that are not logical risks. Risks are good things when they're logical. But if you don't know what you're doing, do not get into real estate if you do not know what you're doing. And if you don't, get over to Lifestyles and learn how to do it. But don't just say, well, I don't have any money, so I can't afford any training, so I'm just going to go dive into this, and you're going to lose your butt. You're going to go broke. And then you're going to go to another seminar and go, well, if you're not where you want to be right now, you haven't failed enough times. So you're going to get up and fail again. Failing is a habit. Succeeding is a habit. You need to build the success habit. Build those muscles of success by winning. Now you win in a small way, then you win in a medium way, then you win in a large way, and then you win in very large ways, and then you win in massive ways. Think about this. The guy that owned the Houston Rockets, Les Alexander, bought it for $85 million and sold it for $2.2 billion to Fertitta. $2.2 billion out of $85 million. That is not small change. But he never could have bought it and made the $2.2 billion if he hadn't already had the $85 million. My friends, the point I'm making is you have to conceive and believe, but you still have to start somewhere. So get off that chair right now and get out there today, make a plan, and start taking action. But make sure it's smart action. And believe this, you can't get rich slow.
Now, from the files of Del Walmsley.
20% of the activities you do in life produce 80% of your results. That's his efficiency ratio. Now, it's obvious in life, if you can do more of the 20% that makes a difference and less of the 80% that doesn't, you can be more successful. So it's that line. Here is the line. You live, let's say there's a line where you are exactly an 80-20 person. Successful people are more like 30-70. Unsuccessful people are more like 90-10. What I mean by that is the people who are unsuccessful spend 90% of their time doing stuff that means nothing and only 10% of the time doing something that's effective. Very successful people spend 30% of their time doing something effective and only 70% of their time doing something ineffective.
Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.
The information and opinions you hear on the Del Walmsley Radio Show are those of the host, Del Walmsley, his guests, and his callers. The Del Walmsley Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Del Walmsley Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.